Coffee with Dan. Every weekday, 8 a.m. onwards on Radio Sri Lanka. Listen to Radio Sri Lanka 97.4 and 97.6 island-wide for Coffee with Dan.
Good morning and welcome to Coffee with Dan. Today we are going to discuss a quite interesting topic, and that is about the port of Hambanthota and its development strategy. We have with us Mr. Rohan Abeywickrema, Director, Sathsindu Group and a consultant in shipping. Good morning to Rohan and welcome.
Morning, Dan.
If I may ask you about the port of Hambanthota, which has fallen into many controversies in Sri Lanka, do you think that the port of Hambanthota project is a national need?
Earlier, Sri Lanka had only one port which could handle containers and large vessels. That was the port of Colombo. And for a long time, this port had only one entrance. So there was a significant security problem and a danger that if a vessel sank or was sunk near the entrance of this port, all Sri Lanka's imports and exports will come to a standstill. So there was a need to have a second port, and Hambanthota therefore would have served that need. But subsequently, Colombo has developed the Colombo South Port, which actually has removed that danger of one entrance and one port. In fact, Colombo South Port is more or less a new port which is adjoining the Colombo port. But however, there is a good reason to have another port in Sri Lanka as an alternate to Colombo.
Now, when we talk about exports and imports in Sri Lanka, is the Colombo port enough to meet, or do we really need a second port, international I mean?
With the Colombo South Port, it is more than enough, and there is significant potential to increase the capacity of the port of Colombo with so many other new terminals that are planned and is to be built in the future. So there is actually no need to have another port to handle the capacity of imports and exports, and for that matter even transshipment.
I understand that the port of Colombo is handling more than 70% of Indian transshipment. In those lines, is Sri Lanka going to have more trade potentials in Hambanthota?
No, because to handle, firstly, the 70% is not only Indian, it's actually Pakistani, Bangladesh and all the region. Having said that, no, Hambanthota cannot handle that kind of transshipment business, because to handle transshipment business, you have to have a thing called a hub and spoke. You have to have the main lines coming with the feeder vessels, then feeding the cargo in and out of the port for the main lines. Now, Hambanthota does not have that kind of network, and it is very difficult and expensive business to build up that kind of feeder business in a port like Hambanthota.
The port of Hambanthota is not a novel concept. It had been there for many decades. Discussions have been going on whether port should come in Hambanthota. Now, considering all those facts, were there concerns expressed about it before the government embarked on this project?
Yes, there were concerns expressed very clearly in the National Shipping Policy document in 2003. there was caution which actually stated that Hambanthota should not be proceeded without actually taking into consideration lengthy feasibility studies and also the funding and so on. So unfortunately, none of these were considered at the time the port was planned and built.
Considering the fact that there were many discussions whether the Hambanthota port is going to be a viable project and it would give some good return, will the investment in Hambanthota port have a reasonable return and can it make profits?
So far, the port has not, that is for the 5 years, it has been in operation. The Hambanthota port has not brought in business into the port, nor has it made profits. The main reason for this is that the port of Hambanthota does not have a hinterland. What is to explain a bit on the hinterland is an area which generates business to a port, meaning import cargo and export cargo. Now in a port like Colombo, there's a massive hinterland which generates cargo, and in fact Sri Lanka's import-export trade is basically centered and focused on the port of Colombo. Now Hambanthota does not have that kind of business, does not have therefore what we call a hinterland, and then that is the main reason why Hambanthota is as at present not a viable port.
Looking at the investment that the country did to build the Hambanthota port, we know that the port of Colombo's profits were utilized to pay off the debt. And can you explain what were these economic figures involved in the Hambanthota project?
Hambanthota port project required an investment in the region of 1.4 billion US dollars. The problems were aggravated because there was a problem with a rock inside the port which was not detected at the time of the planning or construction both. That kind of investment cannot be, as we see it now, cannot be recovered and paid off by the present circumstances in the port of Colombo. Port of Hambanthota. That is what we feel about Hambanthota.
So you're joined with Coffee with Dan this morning, and today we have Mr. Rohan Abeywickrema, Director Sathsindu Group and consultant in shipping, talking about the port of Hambanthota and its development strategy. Now we will go for a break, and when we come back, we will talk more about the very important Hambanthota port. Turning back to our topic, which is the Hambanthota port development strategy. Now, Rohan, we know that there was much talk that took place in Sri Lanka that having a port such as Hambanthota, Sri Lanka could have operated it without the involvement of any other party, and we could generate a huge profit, but unfortunately it was given for somebody else to operate, and Sri Lanka is going to lose. Can't we operate the port profitably instead of giving to China?
The port was operated by the Sri Lanka Ports Authority for 5 years. And throughout the 5 years, the port lost huge sum of money. For example, port continued to lose money from the beginning. 2012 it lost 678 million. 2013 it lost 5 billion. 2014 it lost 3.8 billion. 2015 it lost 4.3 billion, and a total of 15.578 billion. Now this is a lot of money. Ports Authority could have completed the East Container Terminal in the Colombo port with this money if Hambanthota did not lose that kind of money. I think the Ports Authority did everything possible to get the Hambanthota port going. One thing they did was they ordered all the car carriers which was coming to Colombo and was handled in Colombo to go to Hambanthota. As a result, all the cars which came to Sri Lanka were discharged in Hambanthota, and then we had extra costs and possible damages when the cars were carried from Hambanthota to Colombo. So the ship arrivals in Hambanthota were 134 in 2013, 253 in 2014, 276 in 2015, and 267 in 2016. Now in those 4 years, except for 2 vessels in 2015 and 6 vessels in 2016, all were car carriers, which were actually forced to go to Hambanthota. So it's clear that Hambanthota did not have any attraction for vessels to call and do business in Hambanthota. So in addition to that, the Ports Authority called expressions of interest 3 times for people to come and develop the port of Hambanthota. Call for RFPs, requests for proposals. In 2010, there were 27 proposals. In 2012, there were 10 proposals. And 2016, there were 10 proposals. And none of them actually materialized into a real business to handle vessels and cargo in the port of Hambanthota. So it's clear that everything possible has been done to develop business in Hambanthota by the Sri Lankan government, Ports Authority and others. But nothing has materialized, mainly due to various issues connected with the Hambanthota port. And as I said, the main reason is the lack of hinterland, an area which will generate business, and also the lack of infrastructure in Hambanthota. They are short of water, they are short of various other facilities, even hospitals, restaurants, hotels, all those things are short. So because of those shortcomings, the business have not developed in Hambanthota from a Sri Lankan perspective. So it is, I think, fairly clear that although all the attempts have been made, they have failed, and as a result, Sri Lanka is unable to develop any business to turn around the port of Hambanthota.
You mentioned that the port of Colombo is now expanding into a new terminals such as the East Terminal and then a futuristic project which is the North Terminal, but also we have at the moment the South Asia Gateway Terminal, the CICT and SLPA or Sri Lanka Port Authority operated Jaya Terminal. So considering all these things, do you think that having the port of Hambanthota under the Chinese involvement, is there anything that can be done to make this port viable?
There is hope to develop Hambanthota. There are 2 main things that can be done. One is what is called the maritime industrial development areas. That is, there can be industries developed around the port which will generate business for the port. For example, you import and storage of bulk cargo such as sugar, flour, grain, wheat, LNG and LPG, etc. Then importing of crude oils, refining and exporting refined oils. Importing bulk wheat, milling and exporting wheat flour. Importing clinker and manufacturing cement and exporting, etc. If these kind of industries can be developed in the surrounding areas of the port of Hambanthota, linked with the port, then we can have business coming in. And I think it is this area which the Chinese are hoping to develop. The other possibility is to develop Hambanthota for container operations only provided a major shipping line agrees to use Hambanthota as a regional hub. Now we see that kind of models in Kofakan, where APL went and developed their own hub, and Maersk shipping line did the same thing in Salalah. So therefore this is another possibility, and there again with the current depression going through the shipping industry, most shipping lines would not venture into new investments of this type, except even possibly Chinese shipping lines who are now consolidating and growing into a very big shipping line, and then they have the government to back them. So there is a possibility that Chinese government shipping line COSCO may come to Hambanthota and then develop that as a hub. So these are two possible areas for the port to develop, make it profitable.
Now, in that context, do you suggest that Sri Lanka's local entrepreneurs and investors will have better opportunities in investing in the Hambanthota region?
Definitely, but these kind of investments are huge. For example, refining oil. I don't know whether Sri Lankan entrepreneurs have the financial capability of doing that. Then flour mills, big investments. So they would also definitely look for foreign investors to come in with this kind of large projects with large investments. And also the production has to be sold elsewhere in the world.
We will go for a break. Today we are discussing in Coffee with Dan on Hambanthota port development strategies, and we have with us today Mr. Rohan Abeywickrema, Director Sathsindu Group, and he's a consultant in shipping. When we come back, we'll discuss the final questions that I have to Mr. Rohan Abeywickrema. Will Hambanthota port become a highly attractive after this Kra Canal that bisects Thailand, and thereby the ships and main lines will in the future, rather than taking the Malacca Straits, would come through the Kra Canal that is to be built? And my question is, will this Hambanthota port become highly attractive in that case?
Going back to the history of the Kra Canal has been first thought about in 1677 and has been discussed in that year. In 1793, the idea of the Kra Canal again resurfaced. After Burma became a British colony in 1863, an exploration was undertaken. But in 1897, Thailand and the British Empire agreed not to build a canal. 140 years later, in 2017, the status quo remains the same. There is no Kra Canal being planned, or there is no Kra Canal is being built. So let's assume somebody goes and builds a Kra Canal. Let's say China goes and build the Kra Canal after investing all the money. I did a small study for vessels which are going through Kra Canal and compared it with the vessels going through the Malacca Straits. From Dondra Head to Hambanthota and then on to Hong Kong via the Kra Canal is 2,650 nautical miles. In the other case, from Dondra Head to Hambanthota and then on to Hong Kong via Singapore Straits is 2,975 nautical miles, which is a difference of 325 nautical miles. This saving is less than 1 day's steaming for a current commercial vessel, and the time lost in stopping to enter the canal, slow steaming inside the canal, time taken to navigate through locks may negate the advantage of this 325 nautical miles and the time saving. On top of this, navigating vessels have to pay canal fees. So therefore, this Kra Canal, from my point of view, is not a viable canal, and that is why I think Thailand is not pursuing this project.
We know that both India and China are interested in Sri Lanka, not because of anything, but geopolitically, to show each other's strengths to their respective countries. Sri Lanka has become a very strategic and focal point for both these countries. And there was much discussion that giving the port of Hambanthota on lease basis to China would make China's navy have some presence in Sri Lanka. Now, are there any strategic and security concerns in our friendly countries like India, Japan and US about the Hambanthota port if China is going to remain here?
The problem is that Hambanthota is in close proximity to the main east-west sea route, which is going past the Dondra Head. So, if you take Japan, for instance, all their oil imports and their food imports, etc., goes very close to Hambanthota, goes past Hambanthota, and their exports are also the same. So, Japan is concerned that there may be an impact on the freedom of movement for their vessels carrying their cargo. Then India feels also the same, that this one belt, one road concept developed by China is actually encircling them. And there are also other concerns that China is building roads to Pakistan via Kashmir. So this one belt, one road plans of China are definitely a serious irritant to India. So I think United States also feels that there can be some sort of interference on the freedom of navigation on the east-west routes, which is going through Dondra Head. So needless to say, I am sure the other countries also have these concerns. So they are worried that China taking over this port may have security issues connected with that. Because basically, looking at it from another angle, as I explained earlier, there is no viability of the port. It is very difficult to make the port profitable. And then, why is China taking this over? That is the question. So, there are concerns, and I think the Sri Lankan government had to bend backwards to ease those concerns of other countries for this project.
Thank you very much. Although we have more questions and concerns regarding today's topic, the time limits us to end this program for today. You join with Coffee with Dan, and today we had Mr. Rohan Abeywickrema, Director, Sathsindu Group. He's also a consultant in shipping. Thank you very much, Rohan, for being here. And we will back on Monday with another interesting topic. and that would be the tourism promotion strategy of Sri Lanka.
Thank you very much, Dan,
Thank
for giving
you.
me this opportunity to educate the Sri Lankan public on this very controversial issue of Hambanthota port.
Thank you very much, and do join us on Monday with Coffee with Dan.
Coffee with Dan. Every weekday, 8 a.m. onwards on Radio Sri Lanka. Listen to Radio Sri Lanka 97.4 and 97.6 island-wide for Coffee with Dan.